The film begins during the withdrawal of the U.S. Army from Afghanistan in 2021. We then shift to the leader of the Taliban group, named Amir, who has captured American soldiers and placed them in a cage. He then orders his men to bring the prisoners out to execute their leader, named Jake. They take them all to the street, place Jake in the center, and distribute stones to the men so they can stone her to death. However, one of the prisoners refuses to do so. Amir pulls out his gun, kills one of the bystanders, and threatens to kill the others if they don't comply with his orders. The prisoner is forced to obey, and everyone begins to stone her. Fortunately, at that moment, American forces arrive by helicopter, quickly rescuing Jake and leaving. Jake continues to scream for them to save the rest of her comrades, but they tell her they can't risk it because the Taliban has weapons that could kill them all. Jake watches helplessly as her comrades are killed one by one. Next, we move to a girls' school in Pakistan, where we meet a girl named Ellie. We learn that her mother is Pakistani and was the former Minister of Education, and her father is the U.S. ambassador. While the girls are sitting together, they suddenly hear gunfire. It becomes clear that the Taliban, led by Amir, has raided the school. Amir continues firing to intimidate them and takes all the girls as prisoners. Ellie quickly gathers a group of her friends, and they climb to the roof of the school because she knows Amir is looking for her. Meanwhile, Amir asks the headmistress about the whereabouts of the ambassador's daughter. The headmistress lies, telling him that she is absent, prompting Amir to pull out his weapon and kill her. He then orders his men to spread out across the school to search for Ellie. After a long search, Amir finally finds Ellie and her friends, realizing he will show no mercy after what she did. We learn that Ellie was the one who encouraged the girls to continue their education and told them not to fear the Taliban, even though this goes against the group's laws. Because, for them, a woman's place is only at home. Amir then orders his men to throw two girls from the roof as punishment for Ellie's actions. Ellie and the other girls with her are taken as prisoners. Amir then appears on television, announcing that he has kidnapped the girls and locked them in Afghanistan. He says he will release them if a ransom of $10 million is paid for each girl. Additionally, he demands the release of Sheikh Shamali, who was imprisoned by the corrupt Taliban government. Afterward, the U.S. High Command holds an emergency meeting to discuss the plan to rescue the ambassador's daughter. We learn that the U.S. government sent a military force to Afghanistan, but they all died. Therefore, a new plan must be put in place, sending Jake herself to Afghanistan to free the prisoners. However, she cannot directly enter Afghanistan, so she must first travel to Pakistan. Next, we meet a man from High Command named Mike, who is sitting with Jake to explain the plan she will carry out. He tells her that she is their most talented soldier, and no one else can undertake this mission. Mike gives her a fake identity to travel to Pakistan. He assures her not to worry, as he will join her soon. The next day, Jake arrives in Pakistan, where she is greeted by a light-hearted driver who takes her to the place where she will stay. There, Jake meets the rescue team that will assist her in her mission, all of whom are women, each with their own special skills. They are also accompanied by a doctor named Will. They all sit together to discuss the plan to cross the border and reach the prisoners. The plan is for them to pretend to be doctors with a truck full of medical supplies, intending to transport it across the border. Jake learns from her colleagues that the Taliban leader has ordered them to release a prisoner from an Afghan prison, named Sheikh Shamali, to prevent any harm to them. Shortly after, Jake goes to the communications area, where she contacts a woman from the Taliban group named Amira, asking for her help to reach the girls' captors. Of course, the woman is scared, as they might kill her if she tries to do anything like that. She ends a call with Jake. The next day, Jake learns that Mike has arrived in Pakistan, and they meet at a restaurant. Shortly after, they are joined by Ellie's mother, who tells them that she knows someone named Bashir who will help them cross the border. She tells them that if they are unable to complete the mission, she will have no choice but to pay the ransom to the leader to release her daughter. Jake is surprised by her words and thinks about how all the girls who were taken as prisoners were captured because of Ellie, and they are all of American descent. However, she reassures herself that she will be able to save her daughter. The following day, we see Jake and her team preparing to cross the border. Bashir arrives with his brother Malik. They then drive to the border, but suddenly their car breaks down in the middle of the road. Jake sits on the street while the car is being repaired. Malik comes to sit next to her and starts talking to her about the American songs he likes to listen to, although he says he can't talk about these things to anyone else because both the Taliban and ISIS would execute him. After a few minutes, the car is fixed and they get ready to continue. However, they face another problem at a checkpoint, where the guards suspect that they are carrying weapons in the trunk of the car. They search the trunk and find only medical supplies. The American doctor with them gets angry at the soldier and explains that he brought these supplies for the people, and they shouldn't be treated this way. After a while, an officer arrives, scolds the soldiers for what they did, apologizes to Jake and her team, and allows them to continue on their way. We learn that this officer is Bashir, Ellie's mother's friend, the one who helped them cross the border without any issues. At the same time, Amir calls one of the female prisoners, named Sarah. We learn that all the female prisoners he has are American. He tells her that he will release her, but only under one condition. He gives her a message and asks her to leave and take it to the Taliban headquarters. Naturally, she agrees immediately and goes with one of the group members to the headquarters, where she delivers the message, which turns out to be a threatening letter. We see a car bomb parked in front of the headquarters, and suddenly the car explodes, killing everyone in that section. At that time, Jake and her team successfully deliver the medical supplies to the warehouse. They then manage to reach Afghanistan with ease. Once they finish, they go to rest for a while at a hotel. Mike asks the women with him to wear the niqab while walking on the street because anyone who sees their faces uncovered would be killed. Jake puts on the niqab and goes to meet Amira, whom she had spoken to earlier. We learn that Jake had saved this woman's life in the past, and since then, they became friends. Jake manages to find out the location of the female prisoners from Amira. She then returns to the hotel and holds a meeting with her team. She tells them that the prisoners are locked in an abandoned tobacco factory, and she was able to get these coordinates from her friend. The problem they face now is that they don't have enough weapons. They all agree to raid an army warehouse to steal the weapons and supplies they need. Malik and his brother decide to cooperate with them on this mission because it will be difficult and dangerous. At night, as soon as they reach the warehouse, they throw Molotov cocktails at a building full of explosives to draw the attention of the Taliban army. The Taliban quickly rush out to investigate what's happening. At this moment, Jake's team begins shooting, and they manage to kill a large number of them. They then start gathering the weapons and supplies they need. At this point, a large group of Taliban arrives. The team quickly uses an RPG to destroy their vehicles. After that, they get into their vehicles to escape. However, during the escape, the doctor with them is shot and falls out of the car. Jake asks the driver to turn back and retrieve his body. He does so. Unfortunately, the Taliban reappears. A firefight ensues. Tragically, Mike is shot in the chest and dies. In the end, Jake manages to take her team and escape quickly. Of course, after the death of the doctor and Mike, the entire team falls into a state of depression. One of the team members, named Rocky, is angry at Jake because Mike died because of her. She tells her that they could have left the doctor's body behind and just left instead of going back. But Jake explains that if they had left the body for the Taliban, they would have immediately discovered that Americans were on the ground, and what they did was necessary to prevent their mission from being exposed. The next day, Jake goes to bury the bodies of her fallen comrades, and she appears to be in a very bad state. Shortly after, Ellie's mother arrives and tells them that there was an explosion at the police station the day before, and one of the female prisoners was among the casualties. She tells Jake that she will not wait for her daughter to die like her colleague did. She informs her that she has brought $10 million to pay the ransom for her daughter. Jake is surprised and asks how she managed to gather such an amount in such a short time. The mother tells her that the money is counterfeit and explains that Amir will not be able to tell the difference between real and fake money because he has no experience in this matter. Jake then asks her team to turn off all their mobile phones so that the Taliban cannot track them. She reassures them that she has sent a distress signal to the U.S. authorities, and support will be sent as soon as the prisoners are freed. At the same time, Amir calls Ellie to the library. She stands before him bravely and asks him about their colleague who died. Amir tells her that he sacrificed her. Then he continues, telling her that he wants to marry her because she is strong and brave, and he needs a wife like her by his side to support him. He informs her that if she marries him, he will spare her fellow prisoners from death. But Ellie refuses vehemently, telling him that she is ready to die there rather than marry him. At the same time, The woman named Amira arrives at Jake and her team and tells them that she has decided to help them and cooperate with them. She says that she has heard information that the Taliban army plans to move the girls to another location, but she doesn't know where they will take them. She adds that she has learned the location of the prison where Sheikh Shinali is held, and Jake and her team's new mission will be to kidnap the Sheikh and deliver him to the Taliban leader. Jake tells her team that, in the worst case, if they are caught by the Taliban, they must admit that they are Americans, because in that case, the Taliban will not kill them, but will hold them for ransom from the United States. At this moment, we see that they are transferring the Sheikh from the prison where he is held to another one, and Jake and her team are monitoring his movements using a drone. Jake's team prepares to open fire on the soldiers, but at that moment, a bus appears and approaches them. Rocky quickly rides her motorcycle and stops the bus before the explosion happens. Unfortunately, her feet get stuck under the bus, and she cannot move. Jake and her team begin to fight the soldiers and kill a large number of them. Then they take the Sheikh with them. Jake rushes to save Rocky, but she can't do it because her feet are trapped under the bus, and if she tries to pull her out, her feet could be severely injured. Rocky asks her to leave her and continue the mission. Jake assures her that if the Taliban catches her, she should tell them that she is American. Rocky agrees to this, and then Jake bids her farewell for the last time and leaves. At that same moment, additional Afghan soldiers arrive, and Jake's team begins to fight them. Unfortunately, a bullet hits Rahim, Malik's brother, and he dies instantly. Malik, of course, collapses from the shock of his brother's death and goes to bury him alongside the rest of the team's bodies. Jake goes to stand beside him to console him, telling him that his brother was brave and died courageously. Later, the Taliban hacks in a television broadcast and airs a live feed of Rocky after her capture, preparing to execute her. Rocky refuses to admit that she is American, making them believe that she is an Afghan traitor to her country. Tragically, they kill her in front of the world. We learn that Rocky refused to admit her American identity because she didn't want to remain a captive of theirs. Of course, when the team watches this scene, they completely break down. Jake screams and cries in fury. She goes to where Sheikh Shinali is sitting and raises her weapon at him. At that moment, Jake notices that Amira is holding her phone and calling Amir to inform him of Jake and her team's movements. Jake is shocked by her betrayal. She strikes Amira on the head, knocking her unconscious. Jake writes that Amir and his men have less than 10 minutes to reach them. In a rush, she grabs her team and they flee the scene. Minutes later, Amir arrives and takes the bag of money. He orders Amira to take Sheikh Shinali to the car. Meanwhile, Jake informs her team that Amira gave them false coordinates about the location of the captives. However, Jake had prepared for this by placing a phone in the money bag and activating GPS tracking to follow their movements. They follow the GPS tracking device and reach the location where the hostages are being held. It turns out to be an underground bomb-making factory. When Amir arrives at the factory, he asks Sheikh Shinali to write the marriage contract for Eli. Meanwhile, Jake and her team manage to sneak into the factory while wearing veils. Using surveillance cameras, Jake identifies the location of the hostages. We return to Eli, who has been forced to prepare for her marriage to Amir. As soon as Sheikh Shinali announces the marriage contract between them, Amir immediately pulls out his sword and kills the Sheikh, as he no longer needs him. Shortly after, Amir discovers that the money he has is counterfeit, and he also notices the presence of a mobile phone in the bag, confirming that the Americans have entered the factory. He orders his men to reveal the faces of all the girls in the factory to identify the Americans among them. At that moment, one of the team members detonates an explosion, and Jake uses the chaos to free the hostages. She rushes to the captives and quickly gets them out of the factory. Afterward, she faces Amir directly, and they engage in a fight. In the end, Jake manages to defeat and kill him. Meanwhile, the rest of the team takes the hostages to the car to transport them out of the factory. When Jake's team exits the factory, they find an American helicopter waiting for them. The team members board it to return to the US, but Jake decides to stay in Afghanistan because one of her team members has been captured. Her team decides to stay with her to rescue their teammate together. If you love movies and movie recaps, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more. Hit like if you enjoyed the video and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.